And next up, we have got the fantastic James Bevelander. James has harnessed his love of design for the last 2 years. He's a specialist in animation and video production. James, we are so excited to have you here at the Learning Conference. It's over to you.
Thank you so much, Kath, and I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, couldn't be prouder to be a part of the first ever Learning Conference. So massive shout out to Kath and Kim and the rest of the team for pulling this event together. Yeah, so excited to be a part of the first one and to be talking to a subject that I am deeply passionate about, which is unleashing creativity through the medium of video. Because for me, it's not enough just to be making video. I want to be creating videos that kick butt. Or in this case, they kick Uranus. And look, I apologize up front for that pun, but to be honest, it's probably a bit of a sign of things to come, because this session is littered with horrible visual metaphors and puns. So if that makes you a bit squeamish, you might want to look away. But for everyone else, let's jump into it and ask the very important question of, who the hell is James Bevelander? That is me. I'm James Bevelander. I can easily answer that for you. There's a whole heap of stats about my 20 odd years in the L&D world, but I will point your attention to the little black dotted line with BVAV, which stands for before video, after video. So I guess around 2007, I pivoted away from being a Flash developer. I could kind of see the writing was on the wall there, and went all in with video. So I guess about 70 or 80% of my, working hours over the last 13 odd years has been in creating videos. And I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing teams and on some amazing projects that I believe have made a real difference and added so much value for the organizations that I've worked within. But equally, over that time, I've worked on some horrible projects. I've served up some absolute stinkers, and particularly early on in that phase as I was learning my craft. And I guess this session is me unpacking my brain of what I know works, and probably more importantly, what doesn't work. So hopefully you can learn from my lessons learnt the hard way and apply those to your next video project. So this is the most self-indulgent part of my session, where I'll show you a little show reel I put together. So sit back and enjoy. So there you go. There's a bit of a cross-section of some of the amazing projects I've had the pleasure and privilege of working on. And I threw that last clip in just as a bit of a reminder that I think you have to have fun. I've had so much fun over the years on set, and I think it's absolutely a vital ingredient, because if you're having fun, you're passionate about what you're doing, and you're willing to go the extra mile to make creativity happen. So if you're creating videos and you're not loving it, then, like anything in life, you're probably better that you choose something else. So at this point, you're probably thinking, that's amazing, James. You've created some nice puff pieces there, some inverted commas, some engaging content, and you've got your colleagues sliding across the floor. But what's this got to do with learning? Creativity, why bother? Why, you could just get someone, put them in front of a camera, film them for 2 minutes, talking through the key learning objectives, and it does the same thing. You could save so much time. So I guess to answer that, I don't think that creativity is the cherry on top in learning, or something you roll out once in a while. And I don't think creativity also has to be zany or, visual candy or something that's humorous, creativity can show up in a lot of ways. It's really subtle and clever. But I think I could talk about this all day, but I think I've picked out the two main reasons why I think creativity in the L&D world is absolutely vital, and particularly in video production, you can make the complex simple. I don't think there's any other medium that has this much power. And the example I always think of is, I absolutely love watching Professor Brian Cox, his documentaries. So I think solar system, the universe, he'll sit there on a beach, say with a bucket and a handful of gravel. I'm making this up, of course, but he's able to explain a really complex, mind-melting theory about quantum physics to an idiot like me in a way that I can understand. And there's no other medium that, except a well-executed, creatively thought-out video, that has the power to make that sort of complexity simple. And in L&D, it might be telling a story that makes us feel something. It might be showing a procedure or a model that's really difficult to grasp. So unless you actually have that expert sitting next to you, explaining it to you, for me, video is just the perfect way of getting it out to the masses. And another great reason is, I think video has the power to be memorable and shareable. You look at all the viral sort of videos that are out there, all the viral content on the internet or the interwebs is basically video, I would say. But I think an example I think of here is a couple of years ago when I was working for the Cotton On Group. So those of you that may not know, it's a global fast fashion retailer. For one particular day, I was working in the Melbourne office, which wasn't my usual office. So I was hot desking, and that same day there was an area manager conference basically happening around that desk. And I heard a couple of the area managers talking about one of the videos I'd created 2 weeks previous. It was a video on customer experience. And I'll never forget it. One of the area managers said, see, if L&D created more videos like that, I'd actually share it with my team. And he went on to say that he has made that video the centerpiece of his Monday morning huddles in all his store networks. He makes sure every newbie that comes into the store watches that video. And for me, it was like, wow, that's so much power right there. And it was kind of a reminder that I think in L&D, we sometimes have a bit of a push mentality where we create stuff, we chuck it out there, and we just hope that it sticks. We need to be creating advocates. We need to be making learning cultures that are thriving and have people creating their own learning journeys, their own learning campaigns out there. And of course, video isn't the only answer to this, but I see it as a huge piece of the puzzle. So we're all on board. We all agree that creativity is needed, right? So let's do this. Let's make videos that are super creative. Let's add those creative juices and let Mr. Clippy, I call him, let him fly off into the air where amazing things can happen, where we can make some serious impact. So let's just press that launch button. We're full of the creative juices and we'll be flying high, except unfortunately we won't, because we're still tethered to the ground. So I guess early on in my career, creating videos, this is probably the biggest mistake I made. I wanted everything to be super, super creative. I loaded everything up with creative juices, but I didn't I didn't know the technology that well. I had a limited creative range. I was making videos that weren't that human or had a really bad structure and hard to follow. So these are all the things we need to snip. These are all the chains we need to untether before we are ready to add those creative juices. And that's what this session's about, is snipping all those chains so we can make great things truly happen. And the first chain I want to snip is technology and know-how, because this used to be probably the hardest chain to snip. I'd say 10, 15 years ago. It was really hard to sort of get into digital video because the cameras were either crap or really expensive. But now you basically have a little film crew in your pocket in the shape of a smartphone. So there's very few barriers, I think, to filming. So if you're not sure, you haven't really filmed videos before on your phone, I'll give you a quick tutorial in under a minute. So let's do it. Filming 101. Got to get your shot composition right. So have it in landscape if you're on your phone, or make sure that the framing's right. You don't want half your head sort of hanging out of frame or anything crazy like that. Lighting, you want to get your lighting exposure. You don't want it too dark. You don't want it too bright. You want that Goldilocks in the middle. And you want to have good audio, because bad audio is bad video. And that's pretty much it. And at this point, you're probably thinking, James, that's ridiculous. You've given me nothing there. But all I would say is video is one of those things it's so tactile. You just got to learn as you go. It's like learning to play guitar. You're not going to learn how to string a guitar. You're not going to learn how to tune a guitar and all this theory before you actually pick it up and start playing with it and making mistakes and learning as you go. And I guess another key piece of advice I'd give is learn the fundamentals, but don't get hung up on them, because there's so many rabbit holes you could fall down in video production. You could become an absolute beast at color grading or lighting, but know nothing else about everything else that goes into video production. And I think in the L&D world, we need to be jacks of all trades. So by all means, as you go, get better and better at these things, but don't think that, oh, my mate, you know, he works at this production company and he spends $50,000 on lighting, so I need to do the same. I just don't think we need to have that mentality. And yeah, really, you're going to have so many questions as you're going, but luckily we live in an age where we have the greatest fonts of knowledge at our fingertips. And no, I'm not talking about Mr. Van Winkle, although Vanilla Ice is a very smart man, so let's not underplay that. But YouTube, seriously, for whether it's your first video production, your first video project, your second video project, or your 15th or 500th, you're going to have questions. So just type them into YouTube and you're going to have 10 tutorials at your fingertips. And I guess another blocker that I see people commonly putting up is, oh, I haven't got budget to get editing software, or I don't know how to. So, well, we've got YouTube, so that teaches you how to. And I've just looked up a couple of free examples. So DaVinci Resolve's at the high end. There's a whole heap of free editing software out there, which means that you can now film and edit. So woohoo, we're off the ground. We've got Mr. Clippy up into the air. He's actually flying, but unfortunately, he's only Wright Brothers height. So we need to get higher. We need to keep moving up. And to do that, we've got to snip the next chain, which is the fact that we've got a really limited creative range at this point. Okay, we can film, we know how to do that, we can edit, but we're probably just stuck to the one or two styles, the obvious ones like the talking head video, or maybe a really bad scenario, your common sort of fare that you see in L&D a lot. So we need to expand our creative range and stop creating the same couple of styles. But I think there's a few times where I see people that are stuck in the same style and they're pigeonholed in the one or two same styles of video. And I call that the pigeonhole effect. And there's many reasons why that happens and why they can't expand their creative range. But I've thrown up a couple of what I see is the most common one. So you could say the order taker here, a stakeholder comes to you and says, hey, James, I want to create a 15-minute video. I've got the script already there, so let's go and do it. So automatically the style is being dictated, not by you, but by someone else. Or perhaps it's the creator's bias, I call it. So I've just got Beyond, I've been using it for 3 months and I love it and I want to create those whiteboard animations for everything. So we end up doing 100 of those. But you know, after a while, obviously, that's not creative anymore, and your learner's kind of getting a bit sick of it. So all these different reasons. There's so many reasons why we can be pigeonholed. And actually, if you have a reason that's not one of these, or you're not sure how to break out the little box that you're in within your organization or how you work, I'd love to answer that at the end. So maybe write in that comment of why you think you're pigeonholed into a certain style. But all of these reasons add up to a pretty crap learner experience. So how do we get beyond this? We need to choose the right style for the learner. So it's almost like flipping the lens. So at the moment, back in the pigeonhole world, we're choosing the style of video based on, say, our stakeholder or our own personal preferences. Now we're choosing the style that best suits the learner and what their experience needs to be, and also the project, what the project needs are. So whenever I get a brief, I always sort of grapple with these questions. I'll ask them and bundle them all up and filter out. At the end of it, you come up with the best 1, 2, maybe 3 options, which you can choose from there. So as I said, it's about flipping that lens from your needs and the needs of someone else to making all your creative decisions for the learner and the project. And how do we execute? It's good that we can come up with all these different styles and formats, but how the heck do we execute those? I think you're going to be so powerful and you can execute anything that's put in front of you if you become a predator. What the hell is a predator? It's a producer editor. For me, these are the two, I think, key roles in in unleashing creativity and making anything possible. Because when you're a producer, you can really set a creative vision, you can get people on board, you can map out all the steps you need to execute it. And when you're an editor, you actually can execute it. You've got the technical know-how, and you can add a lot of value into the creative process of, technically what's possible. So for me, those are the two key roles. And you might be looking at that and thinking, well, what about the video guy? Which is, it's obviously very important to capture footage, to make videos. But what I would say is, I think an editor, it's almost the chicken or the egg thing. I think an editor in a way is almost more important, because an editor on set, as opposed to just a pure videographer, they'll be filming for the edit. So if things go a bit astray or the script's not quite gelling, they're kind of thinking for the end product. They're going, well, maybe I need to film some B-roll here, which can slot in here, or the segue between these two bits isn't quite working right. So, and I know at the end that's going to look a bit jilted all over the place. So I need to film this one line. So for me, be a predator and you can make anything happen. And now we're up even higher. So we're beyond Wright Brothers. We know how to film and edit. We can choose the right style, which is great. But we're floating around a little bit directionlessly at this height, which is not great. So we need to snip this chain, because we've got bad structure. So we've looked at, I guess, how to make the video and choose it. Now we're delving into the content of that video and what that looks like. So how to make a great structured video is pretty simple, really. Just start, middle, and end, and that's it. Sounds simple, but unfortunately it isn't, because I see these common mistakes. There's 3 common mistakes I see all the time. And number 1 is there's no start. You're straight into the guts of the video. I used to make this mistake all the time, and I see it all the time, and from people that should know better, where there's no context up front. There's no setting the scene. You're just straight into it. And as a viewer, you kind of feel a bit disorientated, or you're asking questions like, what's this video actually about? If you're asking those questions while you're watching something, that's a bad experience. Or number 2, you could have a little bit of the start, bit of the context up front, but it's kind of sprinkled throughout. So again, as a viewer, you're not quite sure what's happening, or you're putting together the pieces of the puzzle as opposed to it being really laid out quite clear and concise up front. And the third thing that I see that happens all the time, and this is an easy fix, is don't finish your videos in the middle. Tie it off, have a call to action, or really recap those key learning objectives at the end. It's so powerful when you do that. And this is a little structure that I follow that keeps me honest and make sure that I'm creating videos that are really well structured. And I just want to call out that the start, middle, and end, this isn't to scale. You'll start, even though it looks bigger here, that might be 10, 20 seconds, could be less. And usually the middle is the biggest. But a little bit like when we were back choosing the right format and style, when I write a script or when I'm structuring a video, I try to think through the eyes of the learner, through the eyes of the viewer. So I'm answering up front, why should I learn this? So why should I be watching this video? And it could be let's say it's an OH&S video where it's about manual handling. Instead of starting off saying, oh, manual handling accounts for 20% of lost hours for this business. Like, as a viewer, that's great. Good on you. You're talking about your business, but what's in this for me? That really needs to be called out really explicitly. So you could be flipping that to saying, manual handling accounts for 20% of lost hours for the business, but also we know that it has the potential of ruining lives. We want you to get home to your family. We want you to be able to play golf or whatever it is. So flip it. So you're giving the person the why. You're actually talking to them. And then the what. I think it's really important, particularly for a really complicated video. Let's say we're talking about a model or we're talking about a process, that you look at that high level before jumping into the detail. So you kind of feel orientated, you know what's happening, as opposed to just moving through all these steps and you're going, well, how many steps are there in this thing? And also perhaps if it's, let's say, I also like to show what amazing looks like. So if I'm doing a tutorial on YouTube, for example, about how to edit a certain thing, I like to see what that final product looks like up front, so I know that I'm in the right video, because it's really annoying when you get further down the track and you realize you're talking about something else. And then the middle is the how. We talk about how we're going to execute what we've just discussed, and then the now what, which again is that call to action and tying off the key points. So this is great. We're now at a point where we've got a great structure. We've chosen the right style and we can film and edit. So we're quite high here. This is really exciting. But I guess when the problem with being up this high at cruising altitude is almost like being on a plane, that every plane trip kind of blurs into the other. They're not memorable at all, really, unless it's a really bad memory, unless they're memorable for the wrong reasons. And this next example is one of those. It is memorable for the absolute wrong reasons. And this isn't technically an L&D video, but this came out from the Australian Department of Finance a few years ago, and it went viral because it was memorable for the absolute wrong reasons. But it's very similar to a lot of L&D videos in the sense that it's kind of scenario. So you could quite easily see this in the L&D context. But enough about that. Let's have a look at the
I'm so stoked for our presentation to the executives this afternoon. It's been a massive challenge, but definitely looking forward to it.
Hey guys, I'm just heading downstairs for my paleo pear and banana bread. Would you like to join me?
No thanks, it's a little bit fancy for me. I'm actually off to an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff network meeting.
Okay, then see you. So how are you finding the program?
It's pretty great, to be honest. I've been here less than a year and I never thought that I'd be working on a project supporting the modernisation program across government.
Awesome. I'm working on a project in property and construction. Hey, are you going to the Young Leaders Network dinner tonight?
Yeah, wouldn't miss it. The last one was great.
Hey Claire.
Hi David.
I had a look at your report yesterday. Great stuff.
Thanks.
We're all really looking forward to the grad presentation this Arvo.
Thanks David. No pressure or anything.
So yeah, thank you. I'm glad that came through, that you got to experience that awesome badness there, and that little bit of canned laughter at the end may or may not have been added by myself, but that was one hell of a zinger. I guess the problem with this type of video is, on paper, it's amazing. Like, you got this little drone shot at the start, some really clever editing, sort of that baton change editing. It is on paper quite a good video, except for the fact, I won't make you watch that again, except for the fact that it's not human enough. Like, who the hell put this together? The acting was robotic. Whoever wrote it, I'm sure, was part cyborg. It's terrible. There's nothing human about that at all. So we need to start creating, we need to snip this chain. So we're actually creating videos that are human. And I see a lot of video makers who are technically proficient. They're amazing at their craft. They create beautiful looking videos, except they suck because they're really robotic. And for me, that's not authentic at all. And it doesn't speak to you on a human level. So you kind of just tune out straight away. So how do we get around this? Well, for me, the number one way to do this, if you're scripting videos, is to come up with a tone map. So what is a tone of voice map? Basically, what you're doing is treating yourself, whether it's your L&D department or you as an individual, as a person, and all right, let's try that again. Okay, yeah, so tone of voice map is really important. And yeah, the best way to, I guess, explain it is really you're treating yourself or your department, your L&D department, as an individual, and you know who your audience is, or maybe a few different cohorts within that audience, and you're talking to each other as individuals. So it's almost like, I liken it to how you speak to your mum at Christmas is different to how you speak to your mates down at the pub. So you wouldn't talk to each other in the same kind of way. So it's really important to know how you want to sound and also how your audience likes to be spoken to. And when you got that, you can kind of map out what that looks like. And you've got a common point of reference for everyone to I guess, review the scripts that you're coming up with and make sure that they're human, they're normal. And it's something that the people are going to connect with, and it's not really putting them off. So the next thing, I guess that's what I will use for scripted to make sure it's more human. The next thing I'll do is I really try to get authenticity happening. You hear people talking about authentic all the time, but it is so important because that's how you make a connection, because people can really connect to stories and people that they feel like they know. So the best way to do that, and I think it's absolutely underutilized, is to tell real stories. It's so easy to go, okay, let's do a scenario or a Beyond video or something where you've got this made up character and you follow their story. How about you follow real stories? And this case study here, again, happened at the Cotton On Group, where the brief was we wanted to really delve into mental health in the workplace and the impact that it's having. Really wanted to shine a light on it. And we could have gone with the HR manager standing in front of the camera saying how important it is and maybe rattle off some stories or stats, but we actually decided to go with real stories. And it was so high impact. And I get goosebumps just thinking about some of those people that shared what anxiety, what mental health, what depression means to them and how it affects their work and how they want to be seen. And it was just so memorable. It was really shined a light on the human side. So sometimes there is nothing more powerful than actually just telling real stories. And you're just going to connect with people on an emotional level, which you couldn't be more human than that. And then another example I like to use is to be authentic. Sometimes you really need to get the most out of your talent, because we're filming people on set who aren't talent, so to speak. They're people that generally have very little experience in front of the camera, and sometimes they could just nail it in front of a crowd of 4,000 people, but you put them in front of the camera and they go to water. And this example here, I like to reference a bit. I was reading a paper a few years ago, and they're talking about the Naked Chef series that obviously Jamie Oliver was a part of. And Jamie Oliver was found in a kitchen. I think the producers of BBC were walking through, they saw this guy and they're like, he's got so much energy, we need to get him, we need to bottle that, put him in front of a camera, and yeah, it's going to be amazing. But when they started filming, he went to water. He absolutely lost it. He couldn't deliver it all. None of that energy, none of that personality was coming through. So what the producers did is they actually, as you can see, they put the camera on a 45-degree angle, and they, instead of him talking to a script, because he kind of lost his train of thought, they had him answering questions that a producer would just shoot at him. So in the end of the day, that format looked really casual and cool, and it looked like it was on purpose, but they actually did that so they could get the best out of their talent. And when you're on set, when you're shooting someone, you need to have that same flexibility, because ultimately it's all about getting the most out of the people in front of the camera and making them comfortable so they can deliver in a way that's engaging. And another way to be authentic is with this way here, which I'll try and get my screen sharing right, is I call it connection through imperfection. And I'll show you a couple of examples of what that looks like.
Before opening your ladder, always make sure your hands are positioned in a way that your fingers aren't at risk of being squashed or crushed. Oh, and I just opened it straight on my finger.
What's going on? I don't know. Am I safe?
So there's just a couple of examples of, you could call them bloopers or whatever, but for me, there's nothing more human than seeing people screw up at something. So if that happens when you're filming, don't leave it on the editing room floor. Look at it as little nuggets of gold that you can weave in. And yeah, there's no better way of what I call connecting through imperfection. So, won't make you watch that again. So this is amazing. We have just about done it. So we can make human content. We've got an awesome structure. We've chosen the right style, and we can film and edit. We've got all those things, all those ducks lined in a row. And you could actually say at this point, you could almost just stop, because you're actually producing really good videos right here. But the whole point of this is we want to unleash creativity. We want to start feeding in those creative juices, but we are ready now. He's completely untethered. So let's do it. Anything is possible when we add those creative juices. So for me, these are the key ways that I add the creative juices and really load up. So number one is I ideate with purpose. So I call this the rule of three, where I get a brief and you always go to the obvious. So your idea one is, and in this case study here, once again, was with the Cotton On Group. The brief was that we needed to create a whole suite of videos. I think it was 20 odd videos on soft skills and leadership models that we wanted to roll out to various levels of the business. So we needed to come up with a style and theme of that. And because it's, a lot of those theories that we're talking through are quite difficult to explain. They're quite abstract, that we thought we probably need to do it animated. We can't just have someone talking in front of a camera. So we kind of went to that whiteboard style, which you see all the time, which is it was really creative when it came out. But for me, it's probably a little bit played out now. You could almost say it's cliche within the L&D world. So that's idea one. I knew that we needed to push it further, so we did. We went to idea two, which is putting someone in front of the camera, or putting someone in front of those whiteboard animations happening in the background. And again, it kind of, I don't know, it just didn't feel complete. So pushed that idea to idea three, where we got the talent actually interacting inside the whiteboard animations, or we kind of made it a sketchy sort of hand-drawn look and feel. So instead of them being separate from it, they were in there. They were interacting with the models. They were interacting with different parts of theories, stretching different bits and pieces. As you can see, there's someone in a boat there and in a rocket. And for us, that was kind of the light bulb moment where, yeah, this is the format we want to go with. And it was all because we went through that ideation with purpose. We went from 1, 2 to the third idea, and the third idea is where the magic happens. And I think it's just a really good practice to get into for a number of reasons. But after a while of doing it, you actually go straight to the third idea. And when that happens, you get really speedy at coming up with great ideas. So that's one way that we can add the creative juice. But I think it's equally important to call out that we need to really sell the vision. So it was good that we come up with these zany ideas and everything, but I'm shocking at explaining what is in my head to someone else. So we need to bring people on the journey. And to do that, you just start off with a rough. When they're kind of on board with that, maybe show them a style frame and a storyboard. So if you're working on a video production that's, it's quite hard to explain, I think that's a great way of doing it. And really bringing people on the journey. And another way to get super creative is to get super, what do you call it? Super steely. That's not even a word, but steal artfully. This is how sometimes I might be drawing blanks. I've gone through the 3 steps and I've got nothing. The rule of 3 with the ideas, and I'm still coming up with nothing, or there's parts of my video that I really need to work on. So I've highlighted the steal from many and steal from one, because if you're going to steal, you got to do it with integrity and you got to do it well. So I call stealing from many is when I'm creating my Frankenstein. So I'll watch some videos on Vimeo. I'll pull little bits and pieces out of maybe movies or cartoons I've seen, and I'll sort of bundle them all up into a really cool idea, which then is unique. But I think it's important to drop your own brain power there. Drop that in, put your own creative spark in somehow that pulls it all together and brings that guy to life. So it's an original beast. And another way to get creative, I think there's no better way than humor, making people smile. You build rapport, you get those pattern interrupts. So it could be a bit of a dry video, but there's 1 or 2 moments in there that keep people's attention because it's a bit quirky or makes them laugh. And again, it's quite memorable. But I think in learning, we can't just dial up the learning. We can't just dial up the humor blindly. I've come up with this little bit of a framework where I think we need humor. It should unify. You don't want 1 or 2 people being the butt of the joke, where either all the butt of the joke or no one is. You've got to make it quirky and witty. As you can see, I love word plays and metaphors and that sort of stuff. I think that's a great way of getting a bit of a chuckle and make it meaningful. So what the hell do I mean by meaningful? Here's a couple of examples here that I've used, but using pop culture references is similar to the humor. You don't want to roll something out, or you don't want to roll something out that if one person or a whole heap of people don't get the joke, then it just falls flat and they're kind of like, well, what the hell's going on there? So I use the example of Hey Dougie. I was watching this cartoon the other day with my kids, and I noticed that they're actually referencing or doing a spoof of Apocalypse Now, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I was screaming out, this is so cool, and my kids are looking at me going, yeah, this is so cool. But the beauty of that is they had no idea this is a Francis Ford Coppola movie from the 70s, but they were still on board. They weren't alienated by it. So I think if you're going to roll out jokes, they've got to be done in a way that, you know, they're not, people aren't missing out and they're not getting it. So we've unchained him. We've added those creative juices. This is an amazing place to be. Anything is possible. So let's watch our little guy fly off into the great blue beyond. So here we go. Start, 2, 1, boost ignition, and liftoff. And that is, sorry, I'll say that again. And that is it. Thank you so much for taking part in this session. If you've got any questions, I'd love to answer them with what little time I have left. Thank you so much. That's it.
James, that was absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for such an insightful session. Absolutely loved the puns, just amazing. We are running out of time. We're about to jump into the next session, but I'm just going to quickly ask, do you have any tips on authentic humour?
Authentic humour. So what I would say is, I would say if you get someone in front of the camera, authentic humour for me is personality. So when you get someone in front of the camera, try and get them feeling really relaxed and get, you know, if you've got a funny person in front of the camera, try to tease that out. Or yeah, usually it's almost like that connection through imperfection. Those amazing moments happen when they're not scripted. So I would say try and get as natural as possible, have fun on sets, and that's how you get the authenticity happening. Because I think sometimes if you try to script something too much, it might fall a bit flat. And also if you do script something, get the person who's actually delivering it to read that out. I think that's a great way of making it their own. So that would be how I'd answer that.
Great. Thank you so much, James. The chat was just on fire during your session. Everyone was absolutely loving it. So thank you so much for your time. We all, really enjoyed it. And thank you so much for being at the Learning Conference.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Cheers.
James.